8 life-changing decluttering methods when family makes organization difficult after 60. Did you know that the average American home contains over 300,000 items? And after age 60, that number often increases by 30% as we inherit treasures from parents. Children leave keepsakes behind, and decades of memories accumulate. But here's the shocking truth. Studies show that living among clutter can raise cortisol levels by 15%, affecting both mental clarity and physical health. Today, I'm sharing 8 decluttering methods specifically designed for those of us over 60 facing family resistance. The 6th method completely transformed Catherine's 45-year marriage after decades of disagreement about their crowded home. Stay with me, because the peace of living in a space that truly serves you is worth every difficult conversation. Meet Catherine, a vibrant 67-year-old retired teacher whose home had become what she called a museum of family guilt. 3 bedrooms overflowed with her late mother's china, her adult children's high school memorabilia, and her husband James's lifelong collection of sports equipment he hadn't touched in years. Catherine explained, "Every time I tried to organize, someone would say, 'Don't you dare get rid of that.' But I was drowning in stuff that wasn't even mine. I'd walk into my craft room, which had become a storage space, and immediately feel my chest tighten. I couldn't create anything because there was no physical or mental space left." This scenario plays out in millions of homes across the country. After decades of family life, our spaces often reflect not just our own needs and preferences, but the emotional attachments, expectations, and sometimes outdated priorities of everyone we love. The result? Living spaces that no longer serve us in our prime years, spaces that should be supporting our current interests, mobility needs, and desire for peace. But here's what makes decluttering after 60 uniquely challenging. It's rarely just about the stuff. It's about navigating family dynamics, honoring meaningful connections while releasing the merely sentimental, and sometimes making difficult decisions that others may not initially understand. Have you found yourself hesitating to declutter because someone in your family objects? Let me know in the comments. You're definitely not alone in this struggle. Today, I'm sharing the exact 8-step system that has helped thousands of my clients reclaim their spaces and relationships. These aren't just organization tips, they're communication strategies, boundary-setting techniques, and perspective shifts that make family-resistant decluttering not just possible, but transformative. The most powerful decluttering method I teach begins not with sorting objects, but with clarifying exactly how you want to use your space for the next chapter of your life. Catherine's breakthrough began when I asked her a question most organization experts never consider. How would your 75-year-old self want to use this home? Most decluttering approaches focus on your relationship with the past, what to keep, what to discard. But this method flips the perspective to your relationship with your future. Here's how to implement the future self-visualization. First, find a quiet moment and a comfortable chair in each room of your home. Close your eyes and imagine yourself 10 years from now using this space. Don't rush this exercise. Spend at least 5 full minutes in each room. Ask yourself, what activities bring my future self joy here? What physical needs might I have that this space should accommodate? What daily rituals would make this room serve my well-being? For Catherine, this exercise revealed something surprising. Her future self wanted a first-floor bedroom with space for gentle morning yoga, a reading nook bathed in natural light, and surfaces clear enough that maintaining the room wouldn't require climbing or straining. The exercise also helped her realize that her craft room, currently piled with boxes, was central to her vision of fulfilling senior years spent creating quilts for her grandchildren. Next, document your insights by taking photos of each room, printing them, and writing your future vision directly on these images. This creates a powerful visual contract with yourself. The magic of this method is that it shifts the decluttering conversation with family from getting rid of the past to making space for the future, a subtle but profound reframing. When Catherine shared her vision with her husband James, Showing him the annotated photos, his resistance softened. "I hadn't realized how important your quilting was to you," he admitted. "And you're right. We should have a bedroom on the first floor before we need one." The visualization created a shared language that moved beyond defensive positions about individual objects to a collaborative vision for their next life chapter. What does your future self want to do in your home that current clutter prevents? Share one aspect of your future vision in the comments. Writing it down is the first step to making it real. But now comes the question: how do you start the actual decluttering process when family members are emotionally attached to so many items? That's where our second method comes in. The second method addresses what I've found to be the primary source of family resistance to decluttering: fear that important family history and memories will be lost when objects disappear. The legacy mapping protocol creates a system for preserving the meaning behind possessions while releasing the physical objects themselves. Catherine discovered this was particularly important for her husband James, who resisted parting with dozens of boxes of old sports equipment and memorabilia. "It's not just stuff," he explained, "it's the story of my life." Here's how to implement this method. Begin by creating 3 simple categories for items: legacy objects, legacy stories, and background noise. Legacy objects are the truly irreplaceable items that carry significant family history. Perhaps your grandmother's handwritten recipe book or your father's military medals. These items, which typically represent less than 5% of household possessions, deserve proper preservation and display. Legacy stories are items that are valuable primarily for the memories they trigger, not for the objects themselves. These might include your children's art projects, travel souvenirs, or collections acquired over decades. Background noise includes the vast majority of possessions, things accumulated almost accidentally, duplicates, or items kept out of vague obligation rather than true connection. For legacy objects, create a dedicated preservation space, perhaps a special cabinet, memory box, or display area, where these items can be properly honored rather than lost in clutter. For legacy stories, implement the capture and release technique. Set up a simple recording station with your smartphone and good lighting. Record family members sharing the story behind each item, capturing photos of the object from multiple angles. Catherine sat with James as he shared the stories behind his collection of baseball mitts, how his father taught him to play using the oldest one, how he caught his son's first pitch with another. She created a beautiful digital memory book with these stories and images. Once the stories are captured, it becomes much easier to discuss whether the physical items still serve a purpose. Often family members realize that it's the stories they want to preserve, not the dusty objects themselves. For background noise items, use the 3-container method: 3 large bins labeled relocate, items that belong elsewhere in the home; release, items to donate or discard; and reconsider, items that need further discussion. The power of legacy mapping is that it honors emotional connections while creating practical systems for distinguishing between truly meaningful items and accumulation that no longer serves you. What percentage of your possessions do you think are legacy objects versus background noise? Share your estimate in the comments. Many people are surprised by their answer. Now, let's address one of the most difficult aspects of family-resistant decluttering. The third method addresses what may be the most challenging aspect of decluttering with family resistance: establishing clear boundaries around shared spaces versus personal domains. Many of my clients over 60 find themselves in Catherine's position. Their homes have become storage facilities for adult children's belongings, their spouses' expanding collections, or items from relatives who have passed away. The Boundary Conversation Blueprint provides a structured approach to these often avoided discussions. Here's the implementation process. First, create a floor plan of your home and use 3 different colors to mark spaces: shared domains, areas everyone uses daily; personal territories, spaces primarily used by one person; and disputed zones, areas causing organizational conflict. For Catherine, the living room and kitchen were shared domains, Her craft room and James's garage workshop were personal territories, and the guest bedrooms had become disputed zones filled with adult children's belongings and inherited furniture. Next, draft what I call a space purpose statement for each area of the home. A single sentence describing the primary function that space should serve in your current life. For example, the guest bedroom should provide comfortable accommodations for visitors while serving as my home office between guests. Now comes the crucial part, the actual conversation. Schedule it during a neutral time, not in the middle of a decluttering session, in a neutral place, perhaps over coffee at the kitchen table, and use this 4-part communication template. 1. Appreciation. Begin by acknowledging the emotional value of the items in question. I know your childhood trophies represent important achievements. 2. Current reality. Clearly describe how the current situation affects your daily life. Having the guest room filled with storage means I don't have a proper space to work on my writing. 3. Proposed solution. Offer a specific, reasonable time frame and approach. I'd like to help you sort through these items over the next month so we can create a system for what you want to keep. 4. Future benefit. Explain how the change supports your shared future. Having a functional home office would allow me to pursue my writing without leaving home, which means I can be more available for our grandchildren's visits. For items belonging to adult children, consider implementing what I call the inheritance preview process. Invite them to claim what they truly want now, rather than guessing what might be meaningful to them later. Catherine used this approach with her 3 adult children, giving them each coloured stickers to mark items they genuinely wanted in their own homes. To everyone's surprise, most items remained unmarked. The children felt free to say they didn't actually want the high school memorabilia and childhood furniture Catherine had been preserving. Have you had the boundary conversation with family members about their belongings in your home? What was the most difficult part? Share in the comments. Your experience might help someone else take this important step. Now let's explore a method that addresses the logistical challenges of decluttering in your senior years. The 4th method addresses a challenge that's particularly relevant for those of us over 60. Maintaining energy and motivation throughout the decluttering process without becoming physically overwhelmed or emotionally drained. Traditional organizing advice often suggests setting aside entire weekends for decluttering marathons. But Catherine found this approach left her exhausted and resentful, especially when family resistance slowed progress. The MicroSession momentum technique takes a completely different approach based on research about habit formation and sustainable energy management as we age. Here's how to implement it. Instead of marathon sessions, schedule 3 20-minute decluttering sessions per day, ideally in the morning when energy is highest, after lunch and in the early evening. Use a timer and commit to stopping when it rings, even if you're in the middle of a project. This prevents burnout and helps maintain consistent energy across days and weeks. For each micro-session, focus on a single category of items or a space no larger than what would fit in a medium-sized moving box. Catherine began with her bathroom cabinet, then a single kitchen drawer, then 1 shelf of books. The key to this method is the success tracking system. Create a simple calendar where you mark each completed microsession with a colored dot. As the dots accumulate, you'll visually see your progress and build momentum. Research shows that seeing consistent progress, however small, releases dopamine, the motivation neurotransmitter, making it easier to continue the process despite resistance. Catherine created what she called her freedom calendar, placing it prominently on the refrigerator where both she and James could see their progress. She used green dots for completed micro-sessions, gold stars for areas fully decluttered, and special heart stickers for sessions they completed together. Seeing those dots accumulate changed everything, Catherine shared. Instead of feeling like we were facing an impossible mountain, we could see ourselves making real progress day by day. The micro-session technique also makes it easier to involve reluctant family members. Catherine found that asking James for just 20 minutes to sort through 1 box of sports equipment felt reasonable to him, while the prospect of spending an entire Saturday in the garage had caused him to shut down. After 6 weeks of consistent micro-sessions, Catherine and James had processed more belongings than in their previous 5 years of occasional decluttering attempts. How might you incorporate micro-sessions into your daily routine? Could you identify 3 20-minute windows in your day? Share your thoughts in the comments. Accountability increases follow-through. But even with this approach, you'll encounter items that cause significant family disagreement. That's where our 5th method becomes essential. The 5th method addresses one of the most common points of family conflict during decluttering: differing opinions about what should be kept, donated, sold, or discarded. Catherine and her husband James would often find themselves in circular arguments. But we might need that someday. We haven't used it in 15 years. These debates would stall progress and leave both feeling frustrated and misunderstood. The DecisionFree sorting system breaks the decluttering process into 2 distinct phases, separating the emotional act of sorting from the decisive act of choosing outcomes. Here's the implementation process. First, gather 5 large containers, boxes or bins, and label them with these categories. 1. Active use, items regularly used and necessary. 2. Occasional use, items used seasonally or for specific situations. 3. Emotional attachment, items kept primarily for sentimental reasons. 4. Just in case, items kept out of future anticipation rather than current need. 5. Pass along, items you're ready to release immediately. The crucial aspect of this first phase is that nothing is actually leaving your home yet. You're simply sorting items by your relationship to them. This removes the immediate pressure of permanent decisions that often triggers family resistance. For shared spaces, each family member sorts independently using coloured stickers that correspond to these 5 categories. This creates a visual map of how different people relate to the same items. Catherine and James spent one micro-session applying their stickers to items in their overstuffed linen closet. The process revealed that James had marked several old blankets as emotional attachment, while Catherine had categorized them as pass along. Instead of arguing about the blankets, they now had a clearer understanding of why these items mattered differently to each of them. Once everything is categorized, move to phase 2, the delayed decision protocol. Set aside the pass. Along items for immediate action, but for everything else, create a simple decision matrix. Items both agree are active use or occasional use have clear homes assigned. Items categorized as emotional attachment by anyone are photographed and stories recorded before further discussion. Just in case items are listed in a household inventory but stored in less accessible spaces. For items with conflicting categories, implement the sunset agreement, a specific time frame after which the item will be re-evaluated. Catherine suggested a 6-month sunset for the blankets James was attached to, with the agreement that if they remained unused, they would be donated to the local homeless shelter. This system reduced arguments by 80% among my client families because it acknowledges different perspectives as equally valid, while creating a structured pathway toward eventual decisions. Which of your belongings might fall into the just-in-case category versus active use? Share your thoughts in the comments. Naming these distinctions is the first step in addressing them. But what about items that family members have left in your home without taking responsibility? That's where our 6th method comes in. The 6th method addresses a particularly challenging aspect of decluttering after 60, managing possessions that belong to family members who no longer live in your home but haven't taken responsibility for their belongings. Catherine and James had preserved 3 bedrooms full of belongings for their adult children who had moved away years earlier. "It feels like we're running a free storage facility," Catherine lamented. "But whenever I mention it, the kids say they'll get to it someday or tell me not to touch their things." The absent owner protocol provides a respectful but firm framework for addressing these situations. Here's the implementation process. Begin by taking a complete inventory of absent owner items organized by person and category. Photograph large collections rather than listing every item. This documentation serves both practical and legal purposes. It protects you from claims that valuable items were discarded and helps absent owners visualize the volume of their possessions. Next, draft what I call an intention letter to each absent owner, which includes a clear statement of your needs and plans for the space, photos showing the current situation, a specific time frame for action, I recommend 60 to 90 days, and 3 concrete options for resolving the situation. Catherine's letter to her son Michael included these options. Option A, Michael visits and sorts his belongings within 90 days. Option B, Catherine boxes everything and ships it to Michael's home at his expense. Option C, Catherine sorts items into likely valuable and likely disposable categories, sends Michael photos of valuable items to claim, and donates the rest. The key to this method is establishing and maintaining what I call compassionate consequences. If the deadline passes without the absent owner taking action, you proceed with your stated plan, not as punishment, but as a necessary step to meet your needs. Catherine was initially anxious about sending these letters, fearing her children would feel rejected, but she included this important sentence. Creating a home that serves our current life doesn't diminish our love for you or our desire to have you visit. In fact, it will make your visits more comfortable for everyone. To her surprise, all 3 children responded within weeks. 2 came to retrieve their most valued possessions and gave permission to donate the rest. The 3rd arranged to pay for shipping his items to his home. The bedrooms that had been frozen in time for years are now becoming spaces that serve our current life, Catherine shared. One is my husband's reading room with his music collection properly organized. Another is my quilting studio. And the 3rd is a proper guest room where our grandchildren can comfortably stay. Have you implemented clear boundaries with absent owners of items in your home? What has been your biggest challenge in this area? Share in the comments. Your experience might help someone take this difficult but liberating step. But what about items with genuine historical or monetary value? That's where our 7th method is essential. The 7th method addresses a common source of disagreement when decluttering with family: differing perceptions about the actual monetary or historical value of possessions. Catherine's home contained dozens of items that family law had deemed valuable antiques or future collectibles, from her mother's china set to James's vintage sports memorabilia. These perceived valuables occupied prime storage space and were frequently cited as reasons not to declutter. The value authentication system creates an objective framework for assessing items that family members believe may have significant monetary or historical worth. Here's the implementation process. First, designate a value assessment zone in your home, a well-lit area where items can be examined and photographed properly. Catherine used her dining room table, covering it with a clean white sheet to create a neutral background. Next, create a simple value documentation form for each category of potentially valuable items. The form should include detailed photographs from multiple angles, measurements and condition notes, any known provenance or history, maker's marks or identifying features, and current market comparisons. For items that appear potentially valuable, implement what I call the 3-source verification approach. Research the item using a professional appraisal for highest value suspects. Online auction and sales platforms showing completed, not just listed, prices, and reference guides or collector communities specific to that category. Catherine was shocked to discover that her mother's china pattern, which she'd carefully preserved for decades believing it was valuable, routinely sold for less than $100 for entire sets on secondary markets. Meanwhile, several of James's sports programs from the 1960s had genuine collector value she hadn't recognized. For items confirmed to have significant value, create a succession plan that answers 3 questions. Is this item's value likely to increase, decrease, or remain stable over time? Who in the family has genuine interest in preserving or eventually receiving this item? What is the optimal way to store or display this item to maintain its condition and value? If no family members express interest in valuable items, consider what I call the value conversion option, selling items of confirmed value and using the proceeds for experiences that create new family memories. Catherine and James sold several valuable sports collectibles and used the funds to take their entire family on a weekend trip to a mountain cabin. Trading dusty memorabilia for new memories together was the best decision we could have made, Catherine shared. The most powerful aspect of the value authentication system is that it replaces family myths and assumptions with factual information, making decisions less emotional and more practical. What items in your home have been designated as valuable by family tradition? Have you ever had them professionally assessed? Share in the comments. You might be surprised at what's actually valuable versus what just takes up space. The final method addresses perhaps the most emotionally charged category of all, items associated with loved ones who have passed away. The eighth and final method addresses perhaps the most emotionally challenging aspect of decluttering after 60, managing possessions that belong to loved ones who have passed away. Catherine had inherited complete households from both her mother and aunt within a 5-year period. The grief was overwhelming, she explained. Getting rid of their things felt like losing them all over again, but keeping everything wasn't practical or healthy either. The memory preservation framework offers a structured, nurturing approach to honoring departed loved ones without being buried beneath their possessions. Here's the implementation process. Begin by creating what I call memory anchor collections, carefully curated, space-conscious groupings of items that genuinely evoke your loved one's essence. The key principle is that memory anchors should be visible and integrated into your daily life, not hidden in boxes. For each departed loved one, select 3 to 5 items that most authentically represent them, perhaps a favorite coffee mug, a well-worn cookbook, or a characteristic piece of jewelry. These become your primary memory anchors. Catherine chose her mother's garden shears, reflecting her passion for roses, favorite cardigan, which still carried her scent, and handwritten recipe collection. For her aunt, she selected a distinctive brooch she always wore, her watercolor paintbrushes, and a small landscape she had painted. Next, implement the sacred space strategy, creating a single dedicated area that honors multiple departed loved ones without overtaking your living space. This might be a memory shelf, a special cabinet, or even a dedicated wall with framed mementos. For the vast majority of inherited items that don't make it into your memory anchor collections, apply what I call the legacy distribution system. Host a memory sharing circle where extended family members gather, in person or virtually, to share stories about the departed loved one. After stories are shared, invite family members to select meaningful items. Create heritage packages for younger generations, small collections of items with documented stories that connect them to their family history without burdening them with volume. Explore legacy donations to organizations that were meaningful to your loved one. Catherine donated her mother's extensive gardening library to the community garden where she had volunteered. For items that remain, implement the release with reverence ritual, a mindful process of letting go that honors both the departed loved one and your own need for space and peace. This might include taking photographs, writing a letter of appreciation, or simply spending a moment in gratitude before releasing items to new homes. I realized my mother wouldn't want her possessions to become a burden, she reflected. Passing her things to people who would use and appreciate them felt like extending her generosity forward. What one item from a departed loved one serves as your most powerful memory anchor? Share in the comments. Honoring these connections helps others recognize what's truly worth preserving. Now let's look at how these 8 methods transformed Catherine's home and relationships. One year after implementing these 8 methods, Catherine's home had undergone a remarkable transformation, and so had her relationships. The physical change is dramatic, Catherine shared. We've reclaimed over 600 square feet of living space that was previously used for storage. Every room now has a clear purpose that serves our current life. The guest rooms that once overflowed with adult children's belongings and inherited furniture had been transformed into a proper guest room, James's music room, and Catherine's quilting studio. The garage could now actually fit their car, and kitchen cabinets held only items they regularly used. But the relational changes proved even more significant. "My husband and I no longer argue about clutter," Catherine explained. "The methods gave us a shared language and process for making decisions together instead of getting stuck in the same old conflicts. Their adult children visit more often now that they have comfortable space to stay. They actually apologized for using our home as a storage unit for so long," Catherine shared with surprise. "They said they hadn't realized how the clutter was affecting our daily lives." Most profoundly, Catherine discovered an unexpected emotional lightness. "I thought I would feel guilty about letting go of so many family possessions, but instead I feel liberated. I'm no longer a custodian of the past, I'm fully present in my life now." The systematic approach made the seemingly impossible task manageable, and the clear communication frameworks transformed potential conflict into collaborative problem-solving. "At 68, I finally feel like our home reflects who we are now and what we value. Not just the accumulation of our past," Catherine reflected, "and that's given me the space, both physical and emotional, to truly enjoy this chapter of life." If you're struggling with clutter and family resistance like Catherine was, remember this: reclaiming your space isn't selfish. It's an essential act of self-care that benefits everyone who loves you. Start with just one of these 8 methods today. The future self-visualization is particularly powerful for shifting your mindset from guilt about the past to excitement about your future. If this video resonated with you, please hit the like button and share it with someone who might be facing similar challenges with family and clutter. Subscribe to the Senior Reset for weekly videos on creating your most fulfilling life after 60. Remember, your home should serve the life you're living now, not the life you lived decades ago. The best legacy you can leave your family isn't more stuff. It's the example of living fully in each chapter of your life.